This is going to be a really short video, a quick one. I know I have this habit of saying it's going to be a short video, but it ends up not being short, but this time it really will be. This week I was watching a video from Tim Pool from the Timcast channel. It's not an MG Tao channel, but there's a lot of interesting stuff there because the guy, I think he's kind of libertarian, pretty right wing. So he really goes after those marriage and divorce laws, because marriage is bad for men and all that. But his video had a clickbait title, kind of making fun of that criticism of a man who's single, not married, doesn't have kids, because he's 32, doesn't have kids, and isn't married. And then he talks a lot about not just the lack of a traditional woman to stay at home, but also that he's aware of marriage laws, divorce, child custody, and all that. And that the guy also doesn't have time. He works a ton, has a bunch of projects, and doesn't have time to dedicate to a family or kids. But then he starts to talk about how, just for fun, he made a profile on OkCupid, which is kind of like Tinder, but a more demanding Tinder, with more details, kind of like Parker Feito, which is known here in Brazil, right? And then he started putting in some of those filtering questions. And then he started adding personal values, like moral values, things like if the person's in favor of socialism or communism or not, what the person thinks about capitalism and all that. And of course, there are people who will criticize, like, no, but you're talking about politics and economics with women. They're not going to be interested in that. Yeah, they're not interested in that at all. Their interest is way lower, like tiny compared to men. They've never been responsible for maintaining a society, but anyway. But here's the thing, man. If you want a long-term relationship, if it's to get married and have kids and all that, these values, these moral values and everything, they matter. They really matter. They're very important. But what's interesting is that even so, he started noticing that OkCupid was showing him a bunch of feminist, communist, socialist women and all that. And then he found another study. I don't know if he did it himself using the platform or if he got it from somewhere else that I couldn't access. I just have the image that I'm showing here, which is the following. There's that phrase from TFM that says women are natural leftists. They're naturally communists, socialists, because it's like this. Someone who is naturally weaker, less intelligent, less capable, that person can't embrace freedom because they won't be able to compete on equal footing with others. In this case, women won't be able to compete on equal terms with men. They need help from the government, laws that benefit them, and so on, welfare and all that. So for them, freedom means death because they can't compete on equal terms. So they're naturally more left-leaning, they're communists, they're socialists. And then the statistic he showed there is basically among men and women, the distribution by certain ages of the total population of who are Republicans and who are Democrats. And that's what's funny. There's that phrase from TFM that says all women are leftists, they're socialists, they're communists, all of them are on the left, they're naturally left-leaning. And this chart he showed in the video proves that. Not only does it prove it, but it also shows that women from Generation Y and Generation Z, the last two generations, are women. Extremely communist, extremely socialist, extremely left-wing. A few videos back, I think it was that Mamai Filet video, I brought up the idea that there are women in our society who have been so thoroughly brainwashed, are so feminist, so communist, that they're completely toxic. They're not fit to become mothers, to become wives. These are people who are ruined. There's no fixing them. There's no voice. Actually, there's no going back. Because, for example, how are you supposed to have a relationship with a woman who supports socialism, supports communism, who is a feminist, who doesn't respect men? I'm not even talking about respecting and obeying and all that, about having to explain yourself for everything at home. That doesn't exist anymore. That only exists when the woman is financially dependent on the man and doesn't have family court and the government to screw him over if she asks for a divorce. But I'm talking about respecting the man, you know what I mean? Being a respectful and pleasant companion at home. There's not even that anymore. Everything's messed up. But look, check out the statistic I'm about to pull up here. Among men, how is the distribution? 49% Republican, 43% Democrat overall. So, in general, men lean more to the right than women, but the distribution's okay, 49 to 43, and the rest must be centrist, right? Then you look at women, 38% Republican, 54% Democrat. It's already changed. That is, overall, women are much more left-leaning than men. And then there's the rest, the centrists who are left over. So here's another thing I want to mention. Why is it that generally women who are more traditional, more conservative, tend to be more demanding? She's not just more demanding, which we can see from this chart, because she wants a rich guy, a guy to be a big provider, to take care of her. No, she's not just more demanding because of that, she's also demanding because of market rules. Because she knows that in the market for women, she's in the minority. And the guys who are looking for a more conservative, traditional, religious woman, etc., more right wing, they realize that these women are a minority, so that drives up their value up. So I talked about the general picture. Let's take a look here. Among those over 50, 48% of men are Republicans, 43% Democrats. For women, it's 45% Republican, 48% Democrat. This is our grandparents' generation. I mean, in our grandparents' generation, there was still a distribution. Women lean more to the left, but not that much more to the left. Why do you come to that conclusion? What were the marriage and divorce rules like back then? What were the government's welfare policies, women's empowerment, and all that like? Of course, women weren't that left-leaning. Marriages were meant to last longer, you know. Women weren't rewarded for leaving their marriages and all that. She knew that throughout her life she would depend much more on her husband than on the government. So it had a more okay distribution. Now look over there, between 35 and 49 years old. I even got it wrong when I said it was only Generation Y and Generation Z. Generation X is right in the middle of it all. Look at this, man. 50% Republican, 39% Democrat. Women, 36% Republican, 52% Democrat. I mean, between 35 and 49 years old, Generation X, the little generation of female empowerment, divorces, you know? Putting women in universities, the generation that started affirmative action, this whole thing about quotas for women in politics. Look at the divergence. Women, you have 36% who are Republican, 52% Democrat. It's already starting to get super leftist there. What I was talking about is already starting to show up. A woman who isn't fit to be a wife isn't fit to be a mother. Why is that? They love the government more than they love their husbands. And they'll be willing to sacrifice their husbands in exchange for the benefits the government gives them when they destroy the family. Now let's look at the critical part here. Between the ages of 18 and 34, take this, Generation Y and Generation Z. Man, 50% Republican, 47% Democrat. There are only 3% who are exempt. You see how much more interested men are in politics, economics, and everything else? In all age groups, the distribution of men was okay. Look at the overall figures at the beginning, 49% and 43%. Men above 50% to 48% and 43%. Men aged 35 to 49, 50% to 39%. Men aged 18 to 34, 50% and 47%. Now, look at the distribution of women from Generation Y and Generation Z, ages 18 to 34. 24% Republican, meaning a quarter of them are Republican. So, like traditionalist conservative women, let's call them trad tots, you know? Because they're really out there too, just like the ones after the rich guys, you know, the super wealthy guy. But anyway, conservative, 24%, a quarter. Just imagine how inflated the value of these girls is. And I'm not saying they won't cheat or ask for a divorce just the same. They might ask too, but they're right-wing conservative women. Now, look at the ones who openly identify as leftists. 68%. 24% Republican, 68% Democrat. So, among this generation of women between 18 and 34 years old, 68% openly identify as leftists. And for anyone who follows the news in the United States, man, the Democratic Party in the US is basically like the far left party. It's left versus right. They're the ones who want communism, want socialism, want quotas for women and everything, private companies, public companies, government jobs, and so on. These are women who want abortion rights, women who want the right to divorce at any time. You get it? There are even women in that group who, if you let them, would want to ban DNA testing. So just think about that, man. That's 68% of women from these generations between 18 and 34 who are messed up. It's that generation that's not coming back, and there's no point in saying, oh, it's just a phase. No, man, no. I even think, okay, maybe there's this thing where a girl goes through a little phase, but I think the political polarization, the brainwashing is so intense these days that there's no turning back. So, like, the guy was showing in the video the following. It's not just the fact that he's working like crazy and that there are a lot of women on OkCupid and all that. Like, she's more left leaning and all that. The thing is, the guy looked at the statistics and saw that, like, most women aren't really suitable to marry and have kids with, you know? It's a moral divergence. It's really a moral failing. Like, they're no good. Like, they're messed up. It's two generations that have been ruined. Actually, three, because you can already see there's been a bit of that among women aged 35 to 49. So if you look at it like Generation X, was ruined, Generation Y was even more ruined, and Generation Z, along with Generation Y, are even more messed up. So it's not just that thing where, like, women are less interested in politics or economics. No, it's not just that, man. It's that idea, I don't remember who said it, it was Stephen Molyneux. Women, they love free stuff. They love getting things for free, in quotes, you know? They'll vote for and support the politician, the party, who's going to give them more free stuff. Like I said, right? Female imperative. Getting the most benefits and resources possible with the least amount of effort and the least amount of responsibility. So there's this divergence. They're going to vote for that. That's what they're going to want. They're already naturally socialists, communists, and in a society where you have all this government subsidy, all this government aid, this fake empowerment, this illusion of equality between men and women, where women are subsidized, all the women in society are subsidized by all the men in society, they're going to fully embrace communism. They're going to fully embrace socialism. And since this empowerment means they don't need a husband, don't need a partner, that's it. So it's something there's no turning back from. It's that thing I talk about, the lost generation. So that's it. If anyone has any other ideas for analyzing this chart, more stories to tell, please share them in the comment section. I think everything I can analyze about this has already been covered in this video.